Hey guys, this is Jason. I am inking a page here by Francis Manapul. It looks like a cover. I believe it was from, it's not Justice League. It was, oh, I forget now, to be perfectly honest. I'm sorry about that. I'll probably post it in the description later. First off, I'm going through here and doing some of my outlines on the primary characters, trying to get my line weights. This is one of the first things I had ever really attempted to ink with any kind of proficiency in Procreate, so it's not my best work, but it's one of the few that I have a longer recording of, and we'll go back through and do some more later. But I'm trying to do a little heavier line weight on my primary characters with some variety, just mainly to separate them from my middle ground and background. I think if I were going to do this again with different brushes, I might go through and add a little more variety and thicken up some of these lines. Going in and filling out the hair now. Hair was one of those things that I was kind of weak at for a long time, but I'm working at getting better at. Just trying to add in some shadows and spot my blacks on the primary characters. I think one of the things I appreciate most about inking Francis Manapul is that he, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly, is that he is so clear and precise with his spotting of blacks and white values. So it makes it just clear and a quick, easy read, even while you have lots of detail. It's one of the first things, like I said, that I had inked when I tried to do this with any proficiency, and I've had a chance to actually speak to Francis Manapul, and I've sent him a couple of these pages, including this one, and he was very sweet and encouraging, although he did not offer me any advice on how to improve them. I would love that at some point in time if he sees these online. I'll probably tag him below. One of the things I will speak to in all of this is since I've started this journey, I have been really surprised and delighted at how generous so many of the artists are online. I think they all recognize how hard it was for them to seek and get into the industry when they were younger, too. So they offer me a lot of great advice. And there's just generous artists out there in general, people I haven't even spoken to, but I'd learned so much from watching David Finch's channel, or Jimmy Reyes, or Richard Friend, Francis Manapul even, although his videos are not so much as instructional as they are more about his experience in the industry, and I find those fascinating as well. Walden Wong has some great videos and great critique videos, so you can kind of see the things that you normally do wrong that you need to tighten up, even from other people's work that you will see in your own work. Looks like I'm going through and I'm still working on filling in the blacks for my primary character up top here, and all of that little stubble. I think maybe I probably should have used a smaller brush here for that, but that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about brushes. In this one, I think I am still using just basic Procreate brushes. Not even sure what the names of them are. But I have moved since then into using the Rusty Nib Little Smoothie Inker, which I like a lot. It has a bit of a crow quill feel to it. And then I've adjusted Procreate's classic syrup brush to have a little bit of a rougher edge and a longer taper. So it kind of has a little more of that classic G-pen feel to me, or at least with the pressures that I use. Working in Procreate on an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil. I have since, in the last few months, moved over to Clip Studio. Have done a lot of training videos for that. Took a little bit of a learning curve. But I am liking it a lot, mainly just because I enjoy the scale. I don't really like working in iPad or on my iPad with such a small screen, simply because I end up missing things. And when I go to print out or I put it onto a larger screen, I see things that I've missed and I have to go back and fix. But honestly, some people think of it as a waste of paper, but anytime I ink something digitally, I will print it out and take a look at it, both in full size and then in comic book page size. So I can see if there's anything I'm missing or that I didn't see, But two, also to make sure that my line spacing works, because sometimes, you get in and you start doing something and it's really nice and intricate, and then you print it out and it's kind of just disappeared to nothing because it's been scaled down. Um, so I'll do that. One of the great things about working in Clip Studio and Procreate and digitally is that I can scale in and out a lot too to make sure that those lines work. But I try not to scroll in or zoom in too much because it's really easy to get lost or to um, over detail something that then kind of gets lost later. All right, looks like I've moved into my clouds here. Of course, as you can probably tell, I did this much earlier in recording a voiceover for it. I think one of the things I probably would do differently is if I did this again, I would probably use a lighter brush for some of the details on my clouds. But I do like the line weight variation, especially in the separation from the middle ground clouds to the background clouds. That extra line weight there I feel helps, but I may be wrong on that. Man, all these tiny little lines. It was so, for me at the time, tedious. I've gotten much faster, and I've learned to do that better, and have done a lot of like super detailed stuff since then that doesn't really bother me as much. But I think at the time I found this daunting. Um, so much texture. But it was a great place to learn a certain style of texture I'd never used. In fact, I find that's true a lot of sometimes I'll just pick an artist and I'll do 5 or 6 things from them and learn so much in each different page. And Francis Manapul has definitely been one of those. I've learned a lot of precision textures, like where you kind of space things evenly to just make them look like that texture fits and develops a pattern. I think one of the places that I could have done a little bit better too here is in some of the buildings. I do like the textures that I got, and I like the spotting blacks where I spotted the blacks on most of this too. I think in general, though, it's real easy to get lost in your tools and make everything look too precise, especially for these like broken down or rubbled buildings that have been destroyed. I had to go back through and add a lot of like little textures to kind of make it not feel stiff or flat. And some of this was a little bit of interpretation. I think right above their hand, I was having trouble making out exactly what is that there. And this is not a super high res file, so I didn't have the ability to zoom in and just take a real good look at it and figure out exactly what was happening. So I kind of had to make some choices, which is standard in inking. You'll run across that quite a bit. Even with high res files, graphite will just kind of blur together and you don't know exactly what you're looking at. Having the artist available to ask is wonderful. You won't always have that ability, or if you do, that artist is not going to be able to get back to you in time for you to be able to finish that page. A lot of inking happens in the middle of the night because you are working on deadlines, and that artist is not going to be up at 3 a.m. when you have a question about that one corner of a piece. So you have to make your best decisions, and you have to make sure that your art skills are up to snuff to be able to figure those things out and make a presentable piece. I ink because I get to play around in other people's imaginations. I do like to pencil. I'm able to do it. I find it to be a harder and more tedious process, probably because I am not as comfortable and secure in my own artistic skills from a blank page. And I am getting better at that. I think inking helps me get better at that because not only do I get to play in other people's imaginations, but I also get to see the decisions they made and how they made them and why in a lot of cases as I am inking. And it gives me a real chance to really learn something new each time. You'll also notice I kind of turn off or remove the background sometimes to be able to imply my own line work a little bit because I feel like I'm not getting the clarity I need. Sometimes even just the background makes it feel more unclear, and it's easier for me to just go in and sort of, I wouldn't say redraw, but add my own kind of texturing and how I would do that than just kind of look at and stare at what looks like jumbled graphite pencil to me. Not all of those decisions are going to be perfect. Sometimes you'll send them to your editor and your editor is going to go, what is that? Why does that look that way? Why isn't this more clear? And you're going to have to redraw. That's okay. I think a lot of people get offended at stuff like that. I also think it's very important that when you are working, you send your editor images, small images, as you work along. Don't do all 22 pages and then send them to your editor and then get mad that you got to go back through and correct half of them. You need to be communicating with the other people in your team. I hate to use the term teamwork makes the dream work, but come on now, we all know that it's true. And there are very few artists out there that do everything, that do inks and pencils and colors and so on. So you're going to always need to go through one another, or if you've got it set up where you have an editor in place, that editor should be able to give you direction. They're the team lead. So I struggled a little bit with this area. I had a little trouble making out exactly what was there. I kind of felt like it was distracting a bit, and I kind of reworked it a couple of times. I think even after this video, to get a little closer to what it was, but it didn't turn out too bad. You can sort of tell on that building up closer to his head that I wasn't sure exactly how to interpret some of the stuff coming through the debris, so I decided to let it be a little looser and suggestive. I think that worked, but you tell me. One of the things I had to work on here was I was using a lot of the snap to straight line edge tools, and they work great. That's one of my favorite things about Procreate, and to be honest, it's kind of one of those things I've had to learn to get used to in Clip Studio. Doing straight lines works differently, same in Photoshop. But I like the snap to lines. I found that I was overusing them a little bit on my buildings up front here, and I kind of went back through and added a little bit of texturing and some kind of squidgy lines, a technical term, industry term. You wouldn't have heard of it. But it allowed me to I kind of had to think about it more like hand inking or traditional inking, about just textures. And remember that while these buildings are built with a sense of geometry, they are also in a state of decay and destruction. Even the still standing buildings can't be perfect because they're going to appear flat. Sometimes I had to choose on some of these tiny little lines whether I wanted texture in there or if I actually wanted to go through and fill them in with black. I decided on texture a lot more very often because I thought it was more interesting to the eye. I guess your opinion on whether or not that is too busy or not would be interesting to hear, but let me know. Please be kind. I am still learning, and this is definitely still this may actually have been my very first, if not first one or two pages that I did when I first decided I wanted to try my hand at actual inking with any proficiency. So, yeah, starting to get close here. Yeah, that was definitely a place, that little building right there under her foot is one of those places that I had to kind of adjust a bit here and there so it didn't feel and look stiff while I was trying to do it. I feel like my feathering and hatching there could have definitely been better and a little bit different to kind of give me something different, but it's okay. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I have had a bit of a chest cold this last week, so I'm trying real hard not to cough during these, and I have sniffled a little bit here and there. If we can get through this entire video without me hacking up a lung, I'll be pretty happy. This is, of course, a time lapse, and I will be happy to post some other videos that are not time lapses, but I'll have to break them apart. Some of, I mean, obviously, doing one of these pages takes 6 to 8, sometimes 10 hours, and I can't really post that kind of video on YouTube. So, maybe I'll break some apart and we'll talk about different sections and why I do what I do, or why I've started doing what I do. And I'll definitely reference what tools I'm using down below, but also what resources I'm going to, what artists, what learning resources I'm using, because I've checked out a lot just to learn a lot of things about line weight and hatching, and there's a lot of different artists that have different techniques that I think are very interesting. One artist that I absolutely love is Raphael Albuquerque, but I don't use or incorporate his style very much. I just love his vast kind of brushstroke style that I never seem to be able to emulate. Starting to wrap up here. Feels like I've got most of what I need done. There are a few things that I feel like I maybe missed, but I think I went back over after I went and finished this piece in a different spot. Or not in a different spot, but went back through after this video was recorded and kind of made some minor adjustments and updates. Um, yeah. Well, anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Please like and subscribe. I am going to go ahead and post some more resources down at the bottom, and you guys have a great day.